And I think we need to start with the overall theme from this week's games being Redemption Sunday across the league. And, you just look at some of the things that happened. I thought starting with the Sunday night game that the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, they found their rhythm. They found their identity. They found some speed. And look, the Detroit Lions, they took their best shot at the Chiefs on that opening drive, marching down the field 9 minutes, 54 seconds. It really felt like an emphatic opening statement. And then you look at what happened with the penalty, taking the David Montgomery touchdown pass to Jared Goff off the board. It really seemed to derail the Lions a little bit in that game. So I thought the Chiefs found some redemption on a night where that was arguably the best and most complete team in the NFL, a team that has a physical, hyper competitive culture and mentality going into that building, unencumbered and unintimidated by the environment. And what happens? The Chiefs wind up running them out of the building 30-17. Patrick Mahomes goes off with 3 touchdown passes. He runs for a touchdown. And that was the most complete effort that we've seen from the Chiefs. And I wrote it in Monday's Four Downs column, which you'll be able to check out Monday morning. It really felt like the Lions awakened a lot of what had been missing for Kansas City so far this year, and they looked as dominant tonight as we've seen all year so far this season. And you project that out, they have the eighth most difficult schedule the rest of the way, Kansas City does. So you look at what they are. If they play the way they did tonight, when you're getting Rashee Rice back next week, and it really feels like the Chiefs not only are back, but they're going to be at the top of the conversation in the AFC. But, a franchise that got some redemption of its own over the last couple of weeks is the New England Patriots. And they went down today where you could easily have excused a letdown after the emotional Super Bowl type of a game last week in Buffalo, taking down the Bills. I know it's New Orleans. I know that it's a bit of a sleepy opponent that just knocked off the Giants last weekend. But off the emotional high of Sunday night, I thought the Patriots and Mike Vrabel and certainly Drake May checked another box. Going down there, not letting the emotions of last week carry into this week. I know they only won the game 25-19, but this was another dominant showing in a string of them for Drake May. He goes off for 261 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. Just a historic start to the season for Drake May. But a lot of what the Patriots are doing and what we saw today is it's being powered by dominant a dominant offensive line anchored by number 4 overall pick, rookie offensive tackle, left tackle Will Campbell. He allowed 2 pressures today. Will Campbell hasn't allowed a sack since week 1. So you look at what New England did. You look at what Campbell is doing up front. You look what the kind of season that Drake May is having in his second year. And there's a nice redemption arc being written about the New England Patriots. And they're a team that when you look at the landscape of the AFC, we're going to get to see the Bills on Monday night. But Patriots Bills is setting up like that's going to be the 2-team race in the division. And at minimum, with a win over the Bills already tucked away for safekeeping, at minimum, we have to really start thinking about the New England Patriots and taking them seriously as a playoff team, a wild card team, and maybe a quasi semi threat to the Buffalo Bills in that division and near the top of the conference. But in the AFC, I do think that the pantheon and the hierarchy now is the Bills, the Chiefs, because they're just not going to go away, the New England Patriots, and based on what we've seen the last couple of weeks, and certainly on a 9-sack performance by the defense today, the Denver Broncos remain very squarely in that conversation. They have a formula. They run the football. They play stifling, swarming defense anchored by a dominant pass rush. They just keep getting it done. But we talked about the young quarterback in Drake May. I think it's worth touching on 3 veteran quarterbacks who are walking down a well-worn path of late career redemption. And you got to start with Baker Mayfield down in Tampa Bay. Just continues to find ways to succeed. We've seen them come back and win in comeback fashion. Today, it's unfortunate seeing Fred Warner go down for the San Francisco 49ers. Just another crushing, debilitating injury for a team that's been beleaguered by injuries so far this year. But you lose Fred Warner. But on top of that, you look at it looked early on like the Buccaneers were just going to impose their will defensively, and they kind of did with the interception on the first drive of the game that they cashed in on a touchdown. But it was Mayfield without Mike Evans, without Chris Godwin, who, if you look at the roster, you look at the depth chart, who would have thought that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin would be the luxury pieces on that roster, on that offense, on that receiving core? But I wrote about this in the column. You'll read about it on Monday morning. Jason Licht has built one of the more dominant and complete rosters in the NFL, and they just continue to find diamonds in the rough in the NFL draft that develop into star caliber players. No Bucky Irving, okay, you have Sean Tucker for that, right? No, Chris Godwin or Mike Evans, and Emeka Egbuka, your superstar rookie on the fast track of the Rookie of the Year, gets hurt early in the game. Tez Johnson comes out and has a breakout moment with the 45-yard touchdown catch in the backflip in the end zone. He said after the game he thought the MVP chants for Baker Mayfield were for him. And Mayfield just goes off in this game, 256 yards, two touchdowns. The Buccaneers are for real. The number one seed in the NFC if the season ended today. And they're playing like it. They're playing complementary football. They're forcing turnovers and scoring points off of them. They're getting consistently dominant play from Baker Mayfield with a deep crop of receivers, young players stepping into prominent roles and playing at a high level. I think Tampa is a team that we have to really start taking seriously, similarly to the Seattle Seahawks, who I didn't see this coming in the NFC West, but they go down to Jacksonville, and you want to talk about a team that didn't pass the emotional test? We can talk about the Patriots passing the emotional test, avoiding the letdown, avoiding the trap game. Well, Seattle goes down to Jacksonville, and they were never really in much danger in this game, save for a couple of completions to Brian Thomas by Trevor Lawrence, save for Travis Hunter making another big catch down the field. Jacksonville was never really much of a threat in this game, and the Seahawks win 20-12. And Sam Darnold continues to be the driving force. If it's not for that interception late against Tampa Bay, we're talking about a 5-1 football team at this point after the win today. But he was stellar. He was spectacular. Sam Darnold went for 295 yards and two touchdowns. Jackson Smith and Jigba makes everybody forget about DK Metcalf up in Seattle. 8 catches, 162 yards, and a score. He had a 61-yard catch. Big play machine, big play factory. You have to like what Seattle's doing. You have to love what Sam Darnold has become at this stage of his career. And if we want to talk about the latter stage renaissance and the path that guys like Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff are walking on, you have to open the gate and let Daniel Jones into that conversation. He's now over 1,500 passing yards on the season, and just another dominant performance today against the Arizona Cardinals. 22 of 30, 212, two touchdowns, one interception, a 101 passer rating, and he also added 5 carries for 20 yards on a rushing score. And if you check out Four Downs on Monday morning over at Between the Hash Marks, I chatted a little bit tonight with Brian Baldinger. And he was breaking down for Baldy's breakdowns that game today, the Colts and Cardinals game. And he just pointed out when it comes to Daniel Jones, that not only is he playing some of the best football of his career, but the reason Daniel Jones is thriving right now is, if I can pull up the exact quote here, the reasons that are propelling Daniel Jones is that right now the Colts offensive line is making him well protected. He gets to hand the ball off to the best running back in the league. He's a big target in Tyler Warren at tight end. And the design of Shane Steichen's offense dictates almost exactly where the ball is going to go on every single play. And as far as Daniel Jones specifically goes from Baldinger, quote, very accurate, very precise, and he's gaining real confidence, unquote. He really is. This just isn't the same quarterback that we saw in New York. This certainly wasn't the same quarterback that we saw the Giants unceremoniously release last November after benching him and then making the practice squad safety prior to granting him his release. This was the second fourth quarter comeback this year for Daniel Jones. He's just feeling it in big spots. And of course, having the league's leading rusher in Jonathan Taylor, who went off again today, it helps. Having Tyler Warren helps. Having Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. help. But Daniel Jones has become the catalyst. Daniel Jones isn't running shotgun to these weapons. He's maximizing them. So that's what I thought really stood out today. I love what we saw the moxie out of New England. I love the fact that we saw some resiliency out of the Green Bay Packers. Wrote about this for tomorrow morning as well. Joe Flacco comes in. The Packers only have 3 or 4 days to prepare for him after that trade from the Cleveland Browns. And a couple of long drives. There was a 10-minute scoring drive capped by the Tanner Hudson touchdown in the corner of the end zone. There was the drive towards the end of the game to pull within, I think, 11. I think it was when he hit Jamar Chase on a dime between two defenders, and the Packers lean into their formula, lean into their identity. They ground and pound the rock with Josh Jacobs. They hit Tucker Kraft in a big spot, who just bulldozes a safety into the frozen tundra in what seemed as much an attitude adjustment for the Packers and their offense and a bit of a wake-up call for that group as it did the insurance touchdown at the end of the game. But I like what the Packers did. I think that they were dominant in all phases. Still some things to clean up. They let Flacco and the Bengals hang around, a team that really had no business hanging around. But if Matthew Golden's speed continues to become the spark for big plays, if Jordan Love continues to be efficient down the stretch and build that chemistry with Matthew Golden, who had 96 yards, career high for him today, and they continue to play a physical brand of football with Kraft and Jacobs, the Packers are going to be fine. The Packers are going to be one of those teams that's in the mix in a wide open NFC where, let's face it, guys, there are not any real complete teams, not a lot of dominance on that side of the bracket. But it was a fun Sunday. I thought we learned a lot. I hope you'll check out the column tomorrow between the hash marks on Substack. It's mattlombardo.nfl.substack.com. We'll check in with you Tuesday on the Between the Hash Marks podcast with Mike Tanier. I'm Matt Lombardo. We'll talk to you this week.